Hello and welcome to the English Box. Today we are going to discuss verb patterns. But what is a verb pattern? Well, on the slide in front of you, you can see three different sentences. Sentence number one is, he wanted to play tennis on Tuesday. Sentence number two, she has to avoid playing tennis because of her injury. And sentence number three, they can play tennis. Now, as you may have noticed, there are three different forms of the verb play here. In sentence one, we have to and the infinitive. Sentence two, we have the ing or gerund form. And sentence three, we have the bare infinitive without the preposition to. So you can see that the form of the verb depends on the preceding verb. With the verb want, we use to infinitive. With the verb to avoid, we use the ing form, and with the verb can, we use the bare infinitive without to. With modal verbs, we don't use the preposition to, and we use the bare infinitive immediately afterwards, the same with must, can, might, or may, for example. So let's concentrate on the forms with the infinitive, the to infinitive, and the ing form. So here are some examples of other verbs that we use with the to infinitive: want, need, and ask. I want to watch television, I need to drink some water, and I ask to see my tutor. And when we use the to infinitive, I want you to do your homework, or I asked you to do the washing up. So what about some examples of verbs with ing? To enjoy, to avoid, and to imagine. I enjoy studying English, I avoid drinking too much beer, and I can't imagine living in a cold country. We also use the gerund, or often use the gerund, with verbs like suggest, propose, and recommend. I suggested going to the cinema, I recommended eating the pork, and I proposed changing the style of the advertisement. You'll notice here we don't use any object because the object is implied from the context. If you want to bring in an object, then we normally introduce a new clause. I suggested we go to the cinema, or I recommended he eat the pork. These are examples of the subjunctive in English. You'll notice in the last sentence we use he eat and not he eats. Nowadays it's acceptable to use the gerund form, to use the subjunctive form, and I doubt native speakers would notice the difference if you said I suggested we went to the cinema, if you use the past tense of the verb. Okay, however, it gets a little bit more complicated because there are some verbs you can use with the to infinitive or the ing form. For example, verbs of like or dislike. So verbs like I adore, I like, I can't bear, I despise, I detest, or I loathe can all go with the to infinitive or the ing form, and there's no difference in meaning. However, we do normally prefer to use the gerund, the ing form. It sounds more natural. Otherwise, we have verbs of process, to start, to begin, to continue. These can go with the to infinitive or the ing. But there are also some verbs which you can use with to infinitive or the ing form, but the meaning changes. So let's look at some examples of verbs where the meaning changes. To stop. I stopped talking to my neighbor, and I stopped to talk to my neighbor. What's the difference in meaning? Do you know? I stopped talking to my neighbor means I finished the conversation. I finished the action. And then I did something else. I stopped to talk to my neighbor means I stopped one action in order to talk to my neighbor. For example, I was walking along the street, I stopped walking, and I started talking to my neighbor. Remember. I remember meeting her, and I didn't remember to meet her. In the first one, we don't remember the action. I don't remember, or I have forgotten, the fact that I met her somewhere. And I didn't remember to meet her means I forgot to meet her. We arranged a date at 8 o'clock last night, and I completely forgot about it. I stood her up, and she was left waiting in the restaurant. To try. He tried going to English lessons, and he tried to learn English. He tried going to English lessons means he before, and it was something to experience. He tried to learn English means he gave or he made an effort in order to learn the language. Okay, how are these things expressed in your language? There has to be a way in which these two things are expressed in English. It's quite a subtle difference. Often in other languages it's a little bit more obvious. For example, in German, to stop. I stopped talking to my neighbor would be ich habe aufgehört mit meinem Nachbar zu sprechen, and I stopped to talk to my neighbor. Ich habe aufgehört, mit meinem Nachbar zu sprechen. For example. To try in Spanish, he tried going to English lessons. This would be probar, and he tried to learn English is more intentar. So write in the comment sections how you would do this in your language. It would be interesting to know. So when learning a verb, it's important to identify whether the verb goes with ing or the to infinitive, whether it can go with both, and if there's a difference in meaning, if it can go with both.